In the past 3 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in our developer ecosystem and how their third-party apps have been reaching out end users. And that's precisely one of the ways that we like to measure the impact and the demand of all these different applications and how they can help solve different verticals. The metric that we use is called activations, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. But just to recap, one activation is what happens when an application that was created with one of our SDK is being installed on a unique device. Now, in 2015, when we launched the SDK, we recorded 150,000 of these activations. And that was a very encouraging start. But very quickly, in 2016, we realized that this number was nowhere near the beginning when we reached 1 million of these activations. And in 2017, we blew this number out all the way to 2.7 million activation. And I think you already start seeing the trend of where things are going. The need for these third-party applications is real. Applications are catering to construction, to search and rescue, to agriculture, and so many other verticals. And today, I'm very glad to be here to announce to you that I already passed this number and are at 4.7 million of these activations. Now, this is very, very exciting because it very shows the momentum for the end users. It very shows people like taking these applications and using them in the day-to-day life. But of course, these applications are built by our developers. And this community is thriving and growing. And today, I'm glad to announce that we just passed 51,000 registered developers on our developer portal. Thank you. Now, at DJI, we focus on providing the means for third-party developers to take the platforms and the product that we create, customize them, and adapt them to whatever scenario they're facing. Now, this comes in many flavors. And of course, we have the SDK. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of where we are here. But it also is the work done into providing guidelines, documentation, and proper support. And we did a lot of work this year, and this is going to be continuing on our developer program online. But to get back to the SDK, I want to talk a little bit about the lineup that we have today. The first one that we have is the mobile SDK. Now, the mobile SDK gives the means to developers to create an iOS or an Android app that is capable of connecting to the product and communicating to it in two ways. The first, we get to receive information from the product that you can display it to the user or use it to do like in the sense of logic or controls on it. And the second is allowing you to send commands to the aircraft to change something as simple as a camera parameter or executing very complex missions. Now, of course, this was already very powerful, and you saw the adoption that we got right at the beginning. But there's this one question that kept coming. Hey, can you give us access to DJI Go? Because if I modify this one thing, that'll be so much impactful for my business. And so we took this problem deeper, and we created the UX SDK. This user experience SDK was precisely meant to tackle that problem, giving the means and the power for developers to create a DJI Go look and feel within minutes. And so together with the mobile SDK, they are the perfect toolbox for developer to create applications directly in the hands of their pilot, which is the prime location to capture and communicate with that user, capture that intent, understanding it, and processing it into whatever you think makes sense for your vertical. But in some scenarios, being behind that radio is just not going to be good enough, no matter how good we make that radio. And so this is why we have the Onboard SDK. The Onboard SDK gives the power for developers to create applications that are sitting on a small computer that is physically attached to the aircraft. It communicates with a wired line to the flight control, removing any wireless communication issues. Now, this is the prime spot for any kind of advanced navigation, complex robotics behavior, or heavy data processing. And it's been very powerful because it goes and flies wherever you are. And we've already seen the community doing tremendous things like automodality and their solution that is capable of flying into a GPS-denied environment. But a lot of our other users are facing a bit of a DJI syndrome. We made our hardware so good and easy to use that they're focusing on the software. And then right here, we were asking them to find a computer and putting on that aircraft. But we have a solution for that as well. And this is why today I'm very happy to officially announce the Manifold 2. The Manifold 2 is DJI's flavor of an extremely powerful onboard compute that you can just seamlessly attach and connect to your platform to run your onboard application. In terms of capacity in here, we have the similar processing unit you'll find on self-driving cars. It's so powerful that you'll be capable of taking post-processing applications and taking them into real-time processing. The Manifold 2 is going to be available on Q1 of 2019, and pricing information will follow, but we cannot wait to see what you guys are going to do with this. The next SDK I want to talk about is Payload SDK. We announced Payload SDK at the Menlo Park Fire Department back in April. And this was a very brand new step for us, because for the first time, we were opening a path for people, for hardware developers, to integrate their hardware with our hardware. But more than that, more than just hardware interaction that we've created through the Skyport, the Payload SDK is a deep software integration. Because the payload created on the Payload SDK communicates seamlessly with the mobile SDK. And this is opening a world of possibilities. Because for the longest time, we've been offering people RGB sensors, video sensors, and thermal sensors through a partnership with FLIR. But if you look in retrospective of all the different situations that have been emerging in the past few years, you all know that even though there's a lot yet to be done with these sensors, we're very much looking at the beginning of what can be captured. And so the Payload SDK is the platform for developers to bring these tools not only to their solution, but to the whole ecosystem. And to make this adoption easy, we've streamlined the process in 4 steps. The first one is the validation of the idea. Now, as soon as you modify the physical property of the aircraft, we have to make sure that you're not going to compromise the stability or safety of the operation. And this is why we are involved directly to advise and talk with you to see how your ID can be made a reality. And I'm glad to announce that 25 developers in the past few months have already passed the ID stage. After that, we're going to the prototyping stage. And this is a very significant step because hardware is hard. You have to iterate on things that are slow, it's difficult. But yet again, 20 of these developers have already passed that prototyping stage. So it's very encouraging. Companies are committing themselves to create these accessories that enhance the DJI platform, the DJI ecosystem. And that means that, it speaks loud about how much we've come and where we are right now as a standard and a staple in a commercial space. Now, after this, we're going into the mass production stage. And here, again, more than before, DJI is still here supporting you on both the sales and the manufacturing aspect, where we leverage our experience and our capabilities to help you going to market. And at this point, 5 of these developers have already reached that stage, and this is very exciting. They're very close to the finishing line. And talking about finishing line, 3 of them are already ready to buy today. And these 3 developers are MicaSense, Slant Range, and Centera. And they're bringing multispectral cameras who are going to bring a lot of value into our ecosystem, and like I mentioned before, opening a door to a new set of possibilities. Now, the next SDK I want to talk about is the Windows SDK. Now, you saw before the video of Francisco flying the Mavic Air at Build, where we announced it in partnership with Microsoft. And I want to talk a little bit about what it does technically, but also the implications that comes with it. Technically speaking, the Windows SDK is very similar to the mobile SDK in the sense that it sits behind the remote controller in the hand of your user, and allows you to communicate with the product in the two ways I described before. But what it means, what it implies, is much bigger. Because now, suddenly, we're opening our ecosystem to Microsoft's ecosystem, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, developer community in the world. And you have to think about all these developers available now to create more drone solutions in a way that's going to help solve all the problems that we're facing. But in the commercial space, we also see that the name of the game is getting end-to-end integrated solutions. And that's another point where Microsoft is very much helping here. Because Microsoft has been created over the years a whole panel of technologies, services, and products that are dedicated to cater to the enterprise market. So that huge expertise, that huge pool of technology is going to benefit our ecosystem and grow it. Now, speaking of both Windows and problems that we solve, I want to talk a little bit about another problem that, as DJI has a bit of a tradition, was complex and we took as being simple by leveraging a Windows application. And this is the problem about digitizing the world. Now, I'm here very happy to announce to you DJI Terra. Terra is a 2D and 3D mapping solution that will help users and developers digitize the world. Now, DJI Terra is going to be available in Q1 of 2019, with pricing information to follow as well.